Hi guys, my name's Richard and I suffer from mental illness. Welcome to today's episode, which I'm going to go through my breakdowns. Not the little ones that I have where I have to disappear and go for a little cry. I'm talking about the major episodes that I've had in my life where I've gone to places that I don't want to go again. The reason I'm doing a video on my breakdowns is because I've done some of my own personal videos and I've gone into detail about each of the breakdowns or major breakdowns that I've had, and there is certainly a pattern of behaviour, certainly before the breakdown, during the breakdown and post breakdown. And I've been incredibly lucky that I've had some incredible people in my life that have helped me at every stage following a breakdown. So I wanted to go through those just to give you hopefully a bit more of an insight into what happens when someone has a breakdown, and maybe some of the traits and triggers that they might show. So my first breakdown was in 2005, as I explained in my introduction video, episode number 1. And at the time I was an estate agent, which obviously was an ideal job for a shy and retiring person like me. To give you a bit of background, I had been working for an insurance company for a number of years. It was a very steady job, 8 till 4, Monday to Friday. I knew it inside out, and I needed a new challenge because I was getting incredibly bored and I was finding the job incredibly easy, and I knew that me getting bored and doing something that I didn't really enjoy was only going to lead to one way, and that was going to be issues, me getting in trouble and whatnot. So I can't remember if it was my wife or I saw an advert for an estate agency position close to where we lived. So I applied for it and got it, and yeah, so day one, I knew it wasn't going to go well after day one, really. The signs were there. As I say, I started I think about 8:30, and the office that I was in had 2 incredible estate agents. I mean, they were unbelievable. They're incredibly good at what they did, incredibly skillful at what they did, and incredibly hard fighting, shall we say, and big personalities. And my manager at the time wanted me to be as good as they were as quickly as possible. So no pressure. So I was given a list of people to phone, a list of houses to show, and some techniques, and it was a case of, there you go buddy, there's your phone, crack on. I think I finished my first day at 7 o'clock. And I'll never forget, I got home and I sat on my bed and I cried my eyes out. And I kept saying to my missus, I've made a mistake, I can't do this. I can't be an estate agent, I don't like it. I want to go back to my old job, I'm not going in tomorrow. After a while she talked me down and I calmed down, and long story short, I went back and loved it ever since. So I was a negotiator or salesperson for about a year, or just under a year, and I was pretty good at it. I was earning some reasonable money, because that's what it was all about. Being an estate agent was all about the money. And I got to the point where I was starting to get a little bit bored again. I kind of learned everything because I had so many good people around me. I kind of learned all I needed to learn as a salesperson during that period of time. I wasn't, don't get me wrong, I didn't know everything, but I had a very, very good understanding, and I needed a new challenge. And a branch manager's position came up that I went for, and 2 people turned it down in front of me, and I accepted it, so I was the 3rd choice. and away I went. No experience of being a manager, no experience of running a branch. The branch that wasn't particularly successful. It was in a pretty run-down, not particularly pleasant area. It was a volume office. It wasn't high-end in any, and it wasn't being disrespectful. It just wasn't one of those towns, and it suited me to the ground. And I was incredibly lucky that within a few months I had an area manager that oversaw my office that was incredibly good at what he was. He was a great estate agent himself. He'd gone from negotiator to manager to area manager in a pretty short space of time, and he was bloody good. No nonsense, this is where we're at. And I got on with him great, and he helped me, taught me, guided me through that first year. And it was fantastic. I built a team around me that were amazing. We had a very, very hard working office, and our goal, my goal, was to be Office of the Year. Now, Office of the Year is the biggest accolades you could get as an office. It just basically meant that you earned the most profit out of any of the offices in the area. And that was our goal. And we were nowhere near it. And it took 3 long, hard years to get to that point, and we won it within 3 years. We worked incredibly hard as a unit to achieve that goal. And as I said, I had some fantastic people around me, best in the business. And we worked and we worked and we worked, and we got there. We were working 12, 13 hours a day. I was commuting from Oxfordshire to London every day, so that's another 2 hours. So we were working hard, but boy, were we getting the benefits of that. We were earning some serious, serious money. And I was living a lifestyle that I was incredibly happy with. So no matter how stressed I got, I was living the high life, and I was loving every minute of it. And I'll never forget the award ceremony. We got the trophy, we went out, we picked it up, and I'll never forget sitting at the bar, or at a table in the bar area, with the trophy on the table, with a pint in my hand, and I looked at the trophy and was like, okay, what's next? What am I going to do now? In that moment, all my motivation had gone, because I'd achieved the goal that I'd set. After 3 hard years, I'd achieved it. Now, I'm not one of these people, I haven't got the mentality of, okay, once I've achieved something, I'm going to do it again, or I'm going to better it, I'm going to be even better next time. Once I've achieved it, that's it for me. I need to move on, I need to do something else. So in that instant, my motivation went, and as a estate agent, you need that motivation. So over the next couple of years, a lot of things happened. My area manager moved on to bigger and better things. I got a new manager that wasn't the same. My motivation wasn't great, and I was starting to despise the fact that I had to commute for 2 hours a day. The key people in the office left, and I was given staff that weren't quite gelling. Some were forced upon me, some I'd chosen, and it was with a lack of motivation. It was really, really difficult, and I was feeling guilty that I couldn't motivate myself, I couldn't motivate my team. We were starting to fail, and that was my fault because I couldn't give any more. And then we had a recession. So not only was I struggling to motivate and to push on, I was earning less money because we were selling less houses. So I was building up debt after debt after debt. I was living a certain lifestyle, and my missus had no idea what was going on. The fact that I was earning a lot less, because our lifestyle didn't really change, because I was maxing out credit cards and remortgaging the house and whatnot. So that was playing on my mind as well. And it got to the point where I was getting into work early by about an hour or so, just so I could spend half an hour bawling my eyes out on the toilet, just to get through the day. My wife had no idea at the start that this was happening, but I was slowly being pulled down, and I didn't know what was happening to me. I just felt weak. I felt like a failure. I didn't know what mental illness was at that stage. All I thought was, what's wrong with you? You're not a man anymore, you're weak. So that was dragging me down and dragging me down and dragging me down. And obviously I hadn't spoken to anyone about it. I hadn't even thought about going to the doctor or anything like that, because that's not what men do. So eventually my wife kind of cottoned on that this was happening. And she booked an appointment with the doctor, which I was dragged to, and I went. And I broke down in front of the doctor, and it was like, this is what's been going on. And this is the first time my wife had heard this. So he prescribed me some diazepam, which is basically uppers, for 2 weeks. And he said, look, whenever you get stressed, because at first he thought it was anxiety more than anything else, anxiety and stress, that's what he thought it was. So I was taking those for 2 weeks, and I was popping them like they were Smarties, and they weren't even touching the sides. There was nothing was changing. In fact, it was getting worse. Until eventually, after that 2 week period, I just cracked. One morning, I just cracked. I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't get out of bed. I didn't want to go to work. I wasn't going to go to work. And I was having the start of the dark thoughts were starting to come through. So I went back to the doctor, and that's when he diagnosed me as a manic depressive with anxiety issues. And that's where the pill treatment started, really. But as I've said in previous videos, it's not an overnight cure. You have to go down to kind of help the pills help you back up. And I was in a very, very dark place. I knew what I was going to do, I knew where I was going to do it, and I knew how I was going to do it, because I thought the world would be a much better place without me. Because I caused all these problems for all these people, you know, people at work, because I couldn't be bothered. For my wife, for all the stress that I was putting her through. For my kids, you know, I just felt the only option was for me to disappear so everyone else could get on with their lives and not have this waste of space. And the only thing that kind of stopped me doing it was the feeling of guilt and selfishness, because I was torn. Because as much as I knew that people would be better off without me, there was another side that was saying, why should you get away scot-free? Why should you have an easy out? Why shouldn't you have to face up to what you've done? Why do you get the option to leave it to everybody else? And that stopped me, and that's why I'm still here today. Was that battle between the two, and it was a battle. And the selfish argument won. So I was signed off initially for 2 weeks. I think I was off for about 6 months in total. I'd gone back a couple of times just to test the water, and it just wasn't the right. So 6 months, I was on some pretty strong pills at the time, but I was still dreading going back to work. And obviously over a 6 month period, a lot of things had changed, and I knew pretty much early on that we ain't getting back to the way we were. This is going to be strained, this is going to be difficult, I'll do my best. But I just didn't have that motivation. I didn't want to be there. I could get through the day without crying, but I just didn't want to be there. And I was getting desperate, because I was like, I need to push myself. And I was doing what I thought was a lot more, but the staff had different opinions, and it was fractious, and it just wasn't working. I think I stuck it out for maybe a year and a half, 2 years. Can't remember exact timing, but I'd had a relapse in between that, because the debt situation had got to the point where there was no hiding place. I'd had to tell my missus because we were about to go bankrupt and potentially lose our house. So I did what any self-respecting man would do. I went home one night and I said to my missus, we've got a problem. This is what the problem is. I can't afford the mortgage. I can't afford these credit cards. We're in debt. We're going to lose the house. There you go. Can you deal with that, please? Simple as that. While I retreat back into my own little self and become a non-functioning human again, while you deal with it until such time as you've dealt with it, and then I can come back out and play again. And that's basically what happened. I had not a major breakdown, I had a mini breakdown. But looking back on it, it was that coward's way out, I think. That's how it feels now. It certainly didn't at the time, but that's how it feels now, that I was taking the coward's route out by giving my missus this problem and blaming my mental health to say I can't cope with it, I can't make decisions, I can't deal with all this now. I don't know if that's true or not, I don't know, but that's how it feels. And in fairness to my missus, she just cracked on with it, unbelievably. We had to sell the house. There was no option. We had to sell the house. We looked at all that options, but that was the only option, was selling the house, which was a massive, massive thing for me, that I'd caused us to move out of our family safe home into somebody else's rented accommodation. You know, because us Brits, we have this thing about owning our own castle, and I cocked it up big time. We had debt plans with all the credit cards, all the loans, the banks, etc., which meant we were blacklisted for probably about 5 years. And she dealt with it all. She took it all on. She had me to deal with, she had the kids to deal with, but she took it on and she dealt with it all on her own. And then when everything, the dust had settled, I tried to go back to work again and tried to be, you know, the breadwinner, but I knew that things had to change. I lost it. It was so fractious at work, I just couldn't do it. So I accepted a transfer and a demotion because I didn't want the stress of being a manager anymore. I'd learnt my lesson, it was too much and I didn't want it anymore. And again, I fell on my feet. I worked with a manager that I knew, but I'd never worked with before, and she was amazing, absolutely amazing. She got me from day one. She supported me, she helped me, she put up with me, she guided me. It was like having my wife at work. It was incredible and exactly what I needed at that time and that stage in my life. And I was relatively happy. The pills were helping, because what the pills do is, the way I look at the pills is they're like a bandage. They just put a mask over the issues, so it hides them underneath until they start seeping out, and that's where you have your depressive episodes and all that kind of stuff. Then you up the pills and bigger bandage and it covers it. That's kind of how I look at it. And I think everything was fine for a year or so. And then the pattern started again. The lava stream started to connect again at the base of the volcano, and they were building and building and building, ready to explode. I was getting, again, a lot of changes were happening in the company, and I was getting bored, disinterested, frustrated. Money was tight. I was working all these hours and the commuting was getting to me. I had a couple of accidents on my motorbike that had knocked my confidence, and yeah, it kind of shook me up. And I'd finished that bout of therapy and there was no resolution, and I had a real confidence crisis, and that sent me into another downward spiral. Also, at the similar sort of time, there was a death in my wife's family, that affected her more than it did me, if the truth be told. But obviously I had to share that with her and try and be as supportive as I could. But it all got too much for me again, and I just broke down again and just retreated into the norm, this shell, no motivation, didn't want to do anything. And I'd come to the decision that I needed to leave the estate agency business and I needed to do something different, because I'd lost my mojo, I'd lost that spark, I didn't enjoy the job. And if you don't love the job as an estate agent, there's no point you being an estate agent. It's kind of that black and white. So while I was signed off, I arranged a meeting with my manager and I resigned. And it, to this day, is one of the hardest things I've had to do, for two reasons. Firstly, because I was leaving a job that I'd done for 15 years, that I'd loved and had given me so much. And also I felt that I was letting down this manager that had stood by me and helped me so much over the couple of years that we worked together, 3 years, whatever it was. And I was like, you've done all that for me, but you know what, I'm off, I can't do this anymore. And that was that. Thankfully, again, my wife, incredibly, because we'd been left some money, said that, you know, she was doing a good job, we were relatively comfortable, and it allowed me to take some time off with no plan. I was going to be a house husband. I think I managed that for about 2 weeks before I got incredibly bored and was like, nah, this definitely isn't for me. And I'd started going to the gym because I was fatter than I am now, incredibly unhealthy. And as we all know, the cure to depression is exercise, when we can be bothered to go. But that's another video. So I'd started going to the gym and I was enjoying it. And I thought, and my wife mentioned to me, well, if you're enjoying that, well, why don't you look to become a fitness instructor? Because it was still a job. I wanted a job where I was interacting with people, that wasn't sat behind a desk, wasn't your normal 9 to 5. It was something active, something a little bit different. So I enrolled into a home course and, long story short, qualified as a fitness instructor. There wasn't any full-time positions at the leisure centre that I was working out at, so I got a job in another department, but I kept my hand in the gym. I was doing some voluntary stuff in there and whatnot. And over time, I did various different roles within the centre, and eventually I became a full-time fitness instructor, which I loved. I'd found my level. There was no stress. I was kind of, although I thought in my head I need stress in my work life to keep me motivated, I had no stress at all. I was helping people, I was chatting, I was being the Dr. Jekyll, so to speak, performer that I wanted to be. And I was learning new things. I was learning to be a PT, I was learning to be a studio instructor. So there was all these new skills that I was learning and developing, and I was loving it. It was great, I really enjoyed it. And I think I stuck that for about 2, 3 maybe years. And then I started to get bored. See the pattern? And disinterested, doing the same thing over and over again. And I needed a new challenge. And a position came up as a sales manager in the same leisure centre. Obviously, my sales background, I was like, you know what, I could probably do that. So I applied for it and got it. Obviously, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Not a clue. Yes, I know how to do sales, but I had no idea how to be. I'd never done the sales at the leisure centre as a manager. I didn't know what I was doing. But again, just like before, I had someone that I was working with that was fantastic. Had worked with the previous sales manager and basically did my job with me and for me to a degree for the first 6 months, which allowed me to concentrate on other things, the more creative side of things rather than the boring stuff. and the legal stuff, because she got that and the admin stuff, because I don't do paperwork. And together we came up with ideas, we were incredibly creative, and we built a team, a sales team, that was incredible. And we were setting new records for the number of sales that we were doing compared to previous years, and we were becoming very, very successful. We were incredibly maverick in our approach to pretty much everything, and we had a lot of luck on our side as well. We were in a town that was expanding, gyms closed that we could capitalize on, so we were incredibly lucky as well. We hit a purple patch, but we were doing incredible work, and it was hard work. And I was working for a manager that was great, very supportive, just let me get on with it, so long as I didn't get in too much trouble, wasn't too worried, put up with my opinions and my rants and whatnot. And then after about a year or so, things started to change, not for the better. More restrictions were placed on us as a sales team, which meant we couldn't be as maverick as we were, we couldn't be as creative as we were previously, and we were ending up doing the same old thing month after month, time after time, and that became incredibly boring. My manager left and a new manager came in that was different. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but things didn't work out for this particular manager over, I think, about 6 month, 8 month period. And I was very vocal about that things that weren't being done the right way, or we weren't going in the right directions, things weren't happening quick enough, or decisions weren't being made. Because I was basically, I could do my job in half a day, and the rest of the day I was spent just trying to pretend I was busy. So he left, and I was approached to become the centre manager because I'd been so vocal, and I think I was the only one that was potentially stupid enough to take it on. So I accepted because it was a new challenge, wasn't it? See the pattern? And it was something new. I knew nothing, I didn't know what I was doing. Again, I'd gone from a job that I could do inside out to a new challenge, new stresses, etc., etc. But it was exciting. And I thought, you know, I've got my spark back. It was very similar to when I took over the branch as an estate agent. I got that spark back, I got that desire. I had a grand plan of what we were going to do. I had motivation, I had a target. And I had a fantastic team around me, and I had people that worked with me that were amazing and did stuff for me that they wouldn't do for anyone else because they just wanted to work with me, and did stuff that I didn't have to. So again, I landed on my feet again. And it was tough, it was hard work, but I was prepared to put the work in. My team were with me, they were prepared to put the work in. We all had that goal of being the best that we could be. And that worked for about a year. But the problem with working in a public sector is there's a lot of politics involved. There's a lot of the public involved. And when you work in the same town that you live in, you can't escape. Be it social media, be it being recognised in the street and people moaning, out shopping or out with the family and people talking to you. You just couldn't escape it. And I was getting to the point where I was working 7 days a week, stupid hours, back to where I was as an estate agent, but with none of the financial rewards. The company was changing, more restrictions, and I was getting to that point again where I was losing interest, losing motivation, getting incredibly frustrated, getting more opinionated, getting into more trouble, being told off more, and not really enjoying the job because I couldn't affect it. So yeah, it was like being a captain of a ship, but without actually controlling or guiding the ship in any way, shape or form. You were just making sure the parts of the ship were functioning, but you had no control on the direction or where you were going to go. And that wasn't for me. And then, so the lava flow was starting to bubble again into one area. And the big event that caused the explosion was my dad dying. And that was really hard. My dad died unexpectedly and quickly. And I did what I did with all major events in my life that I didn't want to deal with. I put his death and my grief in a little box and put that in the back of my head, because I'd been asked to be or nominated as an executor of my dad's will. Not that I knew until the will. I threw myself into that. So I dealt with all my dad's estate, dealt with everything, because that's what I wanted to do, because it was a distraction from dealing with the fact that my dad had died. Because I knew that mentally I couldn't cope with that, because I was stressing at work and having doubts at work. I didn't need this trigger to go into another breakdown, because I'd learned from previous experience what my triggers were. So I boxed it and hid it so I didn't have to deal with it. And that lasted for a couple of months, 3 months or so, until dealing with the estate stopped, because I'd done everything that I could do, and it was all in the solicitor's hands at that point. And it was at that point that the box opened and the floodgates opened, the volcano erupted, and I had another breakdown. Again, there was a couple of dark thoughts in there, but it certainly wasn't anywhere near as bad as the first breakdown that I'd had. And this breakdown was more about grief than depression. Looking back on it, it felt the same, but not as severe. And I went to see the doctor, not a problem, spoke to the doctor, told her what was going on, etc., etc. So I'd learned that I needed help. I'd learned that I couldn't get through this on my own. I knew I had to go and speak to the doctor. Obviously I didn't speak to the missus about any of it. She knew obviously there was issues, and she could see that I was retreating back into this shell, this letting the world go around me and not being part of it. And I knew instantly that I was never going to go back as centre manager. I knew that I had to resign. Again, I was in an incredibly amazing position that because of my dad's death, financially, I'd been left a life-changing sum of money. And I mean life-changing. That opened a lot of options to me and the family, which basically meant I didn't have to work. So the option of quitting with the support of my missus, she could see how stressed I was getting. Again, the fact that I was now, working 7 days a week and not enjoying it, and getting hammered on social media. Every time I went out, someone pulled me aside. And she knew that I couldn't cope with it. And she knew that if I carried on, I would go into an even deeper hole, similar to the first breakdown. So we'd both learned the triggers. We'd both learned what was going to happen unless we took action to try and minimise the damage. So I resigned. But I still had to do 4 weeks' notice, which were probably the hardest 4 weeks of my working career, because I didn't want to be there. The staff knew I didn't want to be there. I tried to keep it as normal as possible, but I don't think I was very successful at that. And I tried to put on a brave face, but I was still dealing with the grief of my dad dying. And I hadn't come to terms with that. And I still haven't, to a degree. So it was an incredibly difficult time, but I knew that financially it wasn't a problem. So when I finished my 4 weeks, I left, and I needed options because I knew I couldn't sit at home all day. I knew I had to get out and do something. And again, I was incredibly lucky. I mean, again, that I fell into a job or was offered a job by someone that it's someone I'd known for a couple of years. We had mutual friends and we'd been out, we'd been cycling together. He's the manager of the bike shop that I currently work at. And he offered me a part-time position to work in the shop, which was an absolute lifesaver to me, because it meant I had a purpose, that I could go to work, I could do something. It came with its own stresses, and the anxiety levels even now are up here, because I knew nothing. I enjoyed riding bikes, but I knew nothing about bikes. I didn't know how to fix stuff. My DIY skills are testament to the fact that I'm not particularly great with my hands, and I'm still not. I'm still not particularly good as a bike mechanic, but hopefully what I bring as a customer service, customer facing, selling, kind of makes up for that, which is why I reckon I still got a job. But again, you know, how lucky that I had this very supportive manager, friend, that offered me a lifeline and still does to this day, and is incredibly supportive, puts up with my weirdness, I don't know. And I've learned, whereas I always thought, as I said earlier, that I needed a certain level of stress in my life, that I always needed a goal, I always needed to strive to be the best, I always needed to be pushed to get the best out of myself. I've now learned that, you know what, I'm happy with my life. I'm comfortable, that I'm working part-time, doing something I really enjoy, and I do really, as I said, it brings its own stresses, but I really enjoy what I do. And it allows me the freedom to do this, to have time off. So again, I've landed on my feet, but I've learned through the breakdowns that I've had and my experiences of the past, and by doing these videos and the private videos that I do for myself, that throughout all the treatment that I've ever had in my journey since 2005, and I will be making a video about treatment for mental illness, nothing's really worked apart from the pills to kind of keep me almost level-headed. Nothing has really worked for me apart from what I'm doing now, because my biggest issue is admitting that I've got a problem, because I box it and it opens every now and again, which is why I have little moments and little breakdowns and whatever, but mostly it's under control. But I'm now opening that box more often and looking inside it and trying to admit there's a little battle going on again, from the, oh, box it, move it away, we don't need to delve into that, we can cope with this, to the other side saying the only way you're going to cope with it is by opening it and exploring it and dealing with it and learning to live with it. And the only person that can do that is you, because you can have all these experts talking to you, but it's not really going in, because the box person's saying, nah, thanks, we're not interested in that. And that's kind of where I am. So I hope some of that kind of made sense. I hope you got something out of it, whether you're a sufferer or know someone who's suffering. Hopefully it will get you to kind of look a little bit into your own patterns, maybe, or you may have recognised some of the triggers that I've talked about today. which will help you to understand the before, the during and the after, and what changes you can affect to make it slightly better the next time, because there always will be a next time until you're 100% with your mental illness. I think that makes sense. So as ever, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for the support once again. The first 2 episodes, the feedback that I've got and the messages of support I've got have been incredible. So thank you so much. It does mean so much. And if I'm helping anybody out there, then this is all worthwhile. So as ever, look after yourselves. Leave any comments below. I'm happy to answer any comments. And all being well, I'll see you very soon in the next one. Cheers, guys.